To discuss on election night a particularly important issue for the future of Phoenix. It was my privilege just a few years ago to kick off the Futures Forum and see the beginning of a foment that has had a tremendous impact upon where this city is going in the long run. And in no area is that more important than in the area of the environment, because the report and the efforts of the forum spoke up and said, Phoenix has the opportunity to be the environmental example for the nation, if not for the world. It's an opportunity, of course, we could lose. We don't have to take advantage of it, and that was certainly a key concern of the people writing the report. But I think they felt, and rightfully so, that we had a tremendous opportunity, and it was one that if we acted quickly, we could seize and truly stand out as an example to the nation and the world. The speaker today was to be Carl Hodges of the Environmental Research Lab. Carl sends his regrets. He is at this moment in Saudi Arabia and felt it was somewhat difficult to also be in Phoenix. He faxed the following message to us from Frankfurt en route and would like me to share it with you. It says, "Dear friends of the environment, I'm in Frankfurt on the way to Riyadh after having been in Arizona for just a few days, and I can testify to that. He showed up for the closure of the Biosphere, attended the party, attended the events the next day, and then he was back on the plane. So it was a very short visit. He said, I truly tried hard to be with you tonight. My thanks to Terry and to Dino DeConcini for carrying on. The reason I'm not there is that I'm trying to help balance the carbon cycle of this planet of ours, so Phoenix will not have so many days over 122 degrees Fahrenheit, instead of hopefully only one. I must be in Riyadh as you meet in Phoenix to meet on a major program of desert greening. I tried my very best not to have to be there, but I failed. Please have a great meeting. Hopes to bring back some important results to make up for his absence. Sincerely, Carl Hodges." So I think probably you all know. Carl's a visionary. He's somebody who's been able, in the words of one fellow who introduced him once, he said he was an alchemist. He brought things together that everybody sees around them and creates completely different results that nobody expected. And he's done that in many ways. He's done that by growing plants in Mexico using salt water and potentially changing the entire balance of irrigation crops in this world. He's done it through the preliminary plans for the desert solar oasis to be built in the center of Phoenix, where he was the lead project effort. And the speaker that we do have this evening is somebody who's picked up on many of those themes and has helped Carl in making them become reality. Dino DeConcini has been an avid environmentalist, as far as I know, all his life. When I was a small boy, I drove with him to Sells, Arizona once, and we almost hit a buzzard on the way, and it was very upsetting to Dino. I felt at that point that he had tremendous environmental tendencies. He's been active in the city in helping to make sure that the solar oasis went through an arduous birth process, and in fact one that's still going on, and that it in fact will be a symbol in the center of our city for how to live comfortably in a desert environment. He labors, as I do, under the generally misconceived professional heading of being a lawyer, but in spite of that is a true visionary and a great Arizonan, Dino DeConcini. Dino.
Projects that have come out of the Environmental Research Laboratory. Carl is the alchemist, I guess you might say. I'm the carpenter. I kind of try to hammer them together, bring them into three-dimensional reality. We're going to talk about some of these projects insofar as they illustrate global environmental thinking. I don't know exactly why that's the particular angle, but you have the Indian Ocean there, Saudi Peninsula. Well, I should mention that some of these slides are going to be surprising to you. All of them are going to be surprising to me. They arrived at my desk at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And I should successful, major portions of that will be green in about 10 years. What I'm going to do is give you the history of the laboratory and the evolution of the thinking that is leading to that, and then talk about some of the impact that it will have. Well, off to a good start. Got it backwards. This is the Environmental Research Laboratory at the University of Arizona. It's actually at the airport, and if anyone's interested, after you've seen this, there are tours every Tuesday. They're free, and they start about 2 o'clock. About 25 years ago, in this state, there was a major world conference on solar energy. And one of the conclusions was that there should be a solar energy research laboratory, and in due time it was established in Tucson. And like most solar energy freaks in those days, the idea was that surely we can desalt water with solar energy, and this was the first project. The water was placed in long, narrow, shallow raceways. Could someone please do this job for me, and I'll have you. Excuse me, there's a little spaghetti under here. All right, I guess that's easier on me and easier on you. I'll have to crane my neck here a little bit. The long raceways that you see there are really like shallow ponds, and they're covered with plastic and they're filled with water, and the idea is to raise the water temperature to about 160 or 70 degrees and then put it through the flash distiller. And the energy saved being the energy to raise it to that 160 or 70 degrees. And like most water desalination projects, it was technically feasible and economically infeasible. So the Environmental Research Laboratory decided to look at other ways of using solar energy and cheap resources on the planet. This is a greenhouse. I think it's in Morocco. And what ERL developed was a system of cooling greenhouses using evaporation, similar to the evaporative coolers that most of us grew up with in this climate, except the pads were moistened with seawater rather than with fresh water. Inside a greenhouse, a plant, actually inside or outside, it uses about 90% of its water is just transpired into the air, and 10% is actually used for nutrition and growth. So if you could saturate that air with moisture, then you could grow the plant with a fraction of the ordinary water. These greenhouses were successful. They were built in Abu Dhabi and on Karg Island, which was part of Iran. That one has been destroyed. The one in Abu Dhabi is still in production. The one in Morocco, I'm not quite clear. These are pictures of the type and size of plants that you can get inside greenhouses. This is the Abu Dhabi greenhouse. The camels are there for verification. This is also a greenhouse, except it's not for growing plants. It's for growing animals. The Environmental Research Laboratory decided to extend their research and see what they could grow that would perhaps have more value than animals, than plants. And since 98-point-something% of the world is water, they thought, why not, I'm sorry, that is totally out of line. 98% of the world's water is salt water, and about 2% is available for use by the rest of us. So why not use some of that water in a greenhouse situation? And after investigating a number of animals, including lobster and various kinds of fish, they settled upon shrimp. The first slide you saw is a prototype in Puerto Peñasco. It was used to develop the original system for growing shrimp
in raceways. I think the thinking came out of the desalinization project, and the process is similar to a factory. The raceway being a production line. The shrimp are put in there, the oxygen, the food, the level of pollutants is controlled, and when they're big enough, they're harvested and taken out. The other way to do it is you put little tiny shrimp in a pond, you come back in 6 months, and you hope that they're there. If they are, you're rich. If they're not, you're broke. The second greenhouse, it's just like when you have slides out of sync, my commentary is one slide out of sync. The second greenhouse was in Hawaii, where the project was developed to a commercial scale. And these next slides are about these little animals that have been produced. That's the Mexican blue shrimp. And this is a female shrimp, a mother shrimp, if you will. And if you treat her right, she will make for you 22,000 babies every 6 months. This activity caught the attention of the Disney organization about 15 years ago when they were in the early planning stages for a project called Epcot, Experimental Prototype City of Tomorrow. And how many of you have been to Epcot? Raise your hands. Well, a few. It's sort of an adult Disneyland that gives you some learnable material along with entertainment. And there are many flashy pavilions there. There's one on motion that General Motors paid $100 million for. There's one on cybernetics that I think Intel paid umpteen $1 million for. There's one on energy, I forget, General Electric perhaps paid for that. And they decided to have one on land, the land pavilion. Kraft Foods paid for it. And as it was in design, it was referred to rather derisively as Carl Hodges' lettuce ride. You get in a Disney-style little barge and you ride around and you watch lettuce grow. P.S. It's now been open 10 years. More than 100 million people have gone through it. It is the most popular single attraction at Epcot and the most repeated attraction at Epcot. Carl attributes this to the fact that buried deep in our brains, maybe in the reptilian core, is the knowledge that plants are the other half of our lungs. And we depend on them for oxygen just as they depend on us for carbon dioxide. And if you present plants in interesting and aesthetic surroundings, people will instinctively respond to them. These are additional shots of the land pavilion. This is the barge going around watching plants grow. More of the same. What they actually do is show you all of the great agricultural systems of the world, the different grains that were grown. And this particular exhibit here, the plants embedded in white styrofoam, is sort of beyond aquaculture, and it's, beyond hydroponics. It's aeroponics. Behind those white styrofoam is nothing but air, and every 30 or 40 seconds, a spray goes on, a nutrient spray, and it waters the roots, and you can peek back there. It's sort of intimate, almost embarrassing, but you can actually see the plant's roots hanging down. They grow in no soil whatsoever. It's the type of thing you might do on a space voyage where you wouldn't want umpteen tons of heavy dirt on board to grow plants in. More of the same. Let's just roll through this quickly. This is the aquaculture portion. Those are, I think, shrimp beds. The idea is that the shrimp in red light think it's dark, and so they will do things that they wouldn't do if they knew you were watching them, however the people can see. This is an entirely different project, and it has to do with a class of plants called halophytes. Halophytes meaning salt-loving plants. Now there's two approaches to salt-loving plants. The standard approach is that you take ordinary plants, potatoes or cotton or tomatoes or alfalfa, and through selection and gene splicing, you try and adapt them to salt water. And a lot of progress has been made. And you can get up to, maybe 50% seawater in some cases, sometimes a little beyond. At that point, the plants get terribly disfigured and start producing less and less product, and eventually they die. ERL took an entirely different approach, and that was to seek halophytes in nature, plants that had evolved in salt water over thousands of years in the estuaries and salt marshes of the world, and to then screen and test those plants and see which of those had potential for food for humans, for animals, for fuel, pharmaceutical uses, ornamental uses. And they began with a Rockefeller grant and the cooperation of the University of Delaware and I believe the University of Haifa, collected over 2,000 species, have screened them thoroughly. The process is still going on. If you visit ERL, you will see a greenhouse there that contains over 1,000 of them that are still undergoing some sort of testing. But about 25 have really shown potential, and of the 25, a half dozen are being developed. And of the half dozen, one appears to have real commercial possibility. That plant is called Salicornia, and you are looking at experimental test plots of Salicornia in Puerto Peñasco, Sonora, Mexico. Now the scene switches to Abu Dhabi, where a test plot is also being grown. This is Billy Wood Prince, the former chairman of Armour Foods, who has been the financial backer of much of this research. And numerous sheikhs, and the fellow who looks like the Blues Brothers is, one of the Blues Brothers, is Carl Hodges, whose excuse is he just stepped off a plane from London. I've heard him say that several times. And those of you who have been to London can verify that everybody wears hats like that in London. Salicornia is a succulent, similar to ice plant that you see growing in San Diego. And if you take it while it's green, you'll find that the stems of it, it's called sea asparagus, popular name. The stems of it are green, moist, kind of juicy, and very, very salty. And it's been used for hundreds of years as a salad. It was George Washington's favorite salad, and I found it in Chesapeake Bay now that I know what to look for. It's also used in France, both as an adornment to fish dishes, the way parsley goes alongside steak, and in a salad. And in a really upscale French restaurant, you might see Salade de la Salicornie, and that's what it is. It ain't bad. We actually brought some of the stuff up, and Vincent Jericho, the really Tony French restaurant on Camelback, used it for a while, but apparently we didn't have George Washington's taste or something, so it didn't work. Continuing in my tradition of being out of sync, the Salicornia there was being fed to goats. It has also been fed to sheep and to cattle. It can be, well, let's see. First, it had been used for centuries green as a salad. No one had ever grown it out to its full maturity. It's an annual plant. When you do grow it out, each of the asparagus-like stems turns a golden brown and produces thousands of little tiny seeds. Each seed has its weight, 30% of its weight in edible oil, and the oil, when you express it from the seed, has a chemical content almost identical to safflower oil. In other words, it's a very high quality edible or cooking oil. The meal, the pressed seed hulls that is left behind, has a protein content of about 45%, comparable to soybean oil. So you get the drift. What we're working on here is a substitute or a replacement for cooking oil and for animal feed that can be grown on pure seawater. The previous photograph, I think, was a close-up of that machine. This is in Kino Bay, where the largest experimental tracts have been grown to date, about 50 acres. That first picture was the harvest, and the second picture is when you have a successful harvest, you have a party. And if your party and harvest is in Mexico, you have mariachis. Backwards again. Wonderful. On the right, you have the Salicornia plant. In the middle, you have the seed. In the second from the right, you have the seed. In the middle, you have the oil, which is kind of a nutty flavored yellowish green oil. I've cooked with it, and it is similar to other cooking oils. On the left, you have the meal that is left over. On this, next to center, left of center, you have the meal, and on the far left, you have the straw. And the straw you can substitute for alfalfa. However, it's salty unless you wash it, which is an additional expense. But it is a whole lot cheaper than alfalfa. Now, this is an an example of the global thinking that is going into this process. The idea is to take a city and measure its CO2 content or output on a daily or monthly or an annual basis, and then take a piece of land that could grow a very large biomass using seawater and calculate the amount that you'd have to grow to fix that carbon, to take that CO2 out of the air and fix it back into the soil or into the bodies of the plant. Their suggestion is Tokyo and Saudi Arabia. And that we might find a way of taxing cities with large CO2 outputs and having them contract, not with Saudi Arabia, but let's say with a third world or developing country, to grow these crops and fix them back into the soil, fix the carbon back into the soil there. Other things could happen. Microclimates could develop from the additional transpiration of the plants. And a great process, a terrible process that's been going on for eons, that of eroding the earth and taking its nutrients and wasting it into the sea, could be reversed. We would be taking the sea and using the minerals in the sea to water these plants, and they would in turn enrich the earth. There are a lot of details on this, the type of soil that you need, the flow rates through the soil, but I think that would make it too long. If anyone wants to talk about it afterwards, I can go into it until you get glassy-eyed. This is our former governor, Bruce Babbitt, the current president of Mexico, Salinas de Gortari, and Carl Hodges. This was presented to President Salinas during his campaign, and he showed a strong interest in it. Mexico imports oil seed and edible oil almost $750 million a year. Mexico has couple of thousand miles of desert seacoast running up through Sinaloa, Sonora, and both sides of Baja California. Much of it, thousands of hectares of which, would be eligible to grow this crop. Go ahead. We're now switching to some urban applications of some of these technologies, and this slide is out of sequence, I think. This is a solar oasis, the prototype solar oasis, at the Environmental Research Laboratory in Tucson, and this slide, I think, just shows that you can have a good time in a solar oasis. Ditto. I think that's Clark Terry, second from the right there. This is another shot of a solar oasis, the one in Tucson, using misters to create microclimates on the inside. This was done about 10 years ago, and the mister, of course, has become common practice. The most widely used is now the Arizona Center, where you can hardly walk through there without getting misted. These are some of the crops produced in the solar oasis. All right, we're going to have to flip through this very quickly. Why don't you just start flipping, and I'll stop you. This is the Civic Plaza of Phoenix. This is called Summer Invitation, an summer invitation to the solar oasis. The Civic Plaza of Phoenix is probably one of the most hostile environments on the earth. It's about an acre of concrete with, I believe, 10 small olive trees. And on a day like today, which was 2 or 3, it was probably 110 there. And what it is on 120-degree days, I don't have the slightest idea, but I can assure you that nobody goes there to find out. The Environmental Research Laboratory took the challenge from Terry Goddard to create in that place a cool, moist, green, shady place that would indeed be a gathering place for Phoenix. And I'm going to have to skip the rest of these slides and simply describe in about 2 minutes what's there. And perhaps those of you who are interested, when everything is done, if you want to sit there, we can look at them at our leisure. The idea of the solar oasis is to divide the Civic Plaza in two. On the west side, the side closest to the Hyatt Hotel, will be a pavilion that will be cooled by 12 cool towers. This combines the evaporative cool tower, the evaporative cooler that the swamp cooler we grew up with the wind tower of Persia and Arabian Peninsula, and with only the energy to pump the water to the top, provides cool air. That place will seat 1,200 people, and the convention center can have outdoor events there in the daytime, in the summer. The other side, to the east, towards the convention center, will be converted into an architectural abstraction, an urban version of a desert garden, cool, green, moist, and shady, and it will be cooled by a large cool tower, perhaps 80 to 100 feet high. The air, the velocity of that will just come pouring out and will cool the entire area. That cool tower is designed to become the symbol of Phoenix, the way the arch is in St. Louis or the Space Needle in Seattle, and perhaps the symbol of desert cities everywhere. And the project itself will demonstrate that you can live in what is considered a rather harsh desert environment without excessive consumption of water and without excessive consumption of energy. The water that will be used in the cool tower and in the water features and even in flushing the public toilets there will be gathered from the roof of the Civic Plaza and from the Herberger Theater. And the energy will be from photovoltaics, and that will pump water to the top of the cool tower, and nature will do the rest. Thank you. There's a lot more to this, as you can imagine. And as I say,
thank you so much, Dino. We really appreciate that, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to cooling off in Phoenix in the summertime via the Solar Oasis project. I know I am. I want to now hopefully have somebody move this. And does this interfere with anybody seeing the presenters? I would think so. Is it obstructing your view? Yeah. Okay, let's move it. Thank you. As we're moving this, I just want to acknowledge the Planning Committee, Mary Lou Bezette at the Arizona Business Gazette, who's accepting an award actually at Epcot Center right now. Mary Montalvo, and from the City of Phoenix, Terry Morris, SRP, Karin Paul, who's with, I can never pronounce, whose help was immeasurable, and Lynn Downer. And I'd like to also acknowledge the President of the United Nations Association, who's here tonight, Barbara Nell Stake. So thank you very much. We'd like to have you all come up in sets of 7, the first 7. And we would like to move through this as quickly as possible. So when the 7th speaker has finished, that the 7 of you rise and leave, and the next 7 come and take your places. Please bring your tent cards with you, and if you would take your place from right to left with number 1 at this point, if we can do that. If not, that's all right too. Jeffrey, do you want to? We're going to start over here. Mary's here.
Can we sit down to this?
Right back there.
Oh, back there.
What number are you?
Number 1.
I thought I was number 2. Oh, you're in group 2. Or in group 1. Just need to look over here.
I think he's here for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you sign in? Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're running right on time, so let's hope we can stay with this. There are a few extra speakers who would like to be on the program as well, and we want to keep this to 2 hours. So this is being videotaped by SRP and will be hopefully shown on VCAT Cable Access TV next month. you want to, okay.
sit.
You want to, well, that's all right. Why don't you stand? Since everybody's
So?
sitting, all right. All right. Each one has 3 minutes, and I want to start with our first presenter, Jeffrey Plotz, who is a desert advocate. I was about to say the devil's advocate, but I suppose he is that too at times.
Been known to be a bit devilish in my time. It's lovely to see some familiar faces back from Earth Day. Nice to see it. On Earth Day, actually in 1990 at the state capitol celebrations, instead of speaking to one of a number of environmental issues that I'm avidly involved with, I gave a poetic address. Why so? Well, though issues can indeed fire the mind and heart of the activist, it is the power of poetry that can touch their soul. If we are to win our issues well, we must not lose our passion. And if we are to keep our passion, we need to be touched to the core in our souls. I offer you tonight, therefore, the same earth verse that I gave on April the 22nd, 1990, because though issues may come and go, the potency of a poet's words in defense of Mother Nature never fades. We are all here today to celebrate the earth and to give joyous reaffirmation of our love for the land. Let us one and all together use this special day as a stepping stone to higher things in defense of the earth, which my late friend Edward Abbey called the only home we shall ever know, the only paradise we'll ever need, if only we had the eyes to see. Scientists study the earth and give us knowledge of the mind. Poets write about the earth and give us beauty of the spirit. I'd like to share some of that beauty with you. John Muir, savior of the California redwoods and founder of the Sierra Club, said, shall I try a Scottish accent? Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and places to pray in, where nature may heal and cheer and give strength to body and soul alike. And William Wordsworth, perhaps the greatest of the nature poets, spoke of the natural world's healing power and soothing disposition in this way. And this prayer I make, knowing that nature never did betray the heart that loved her. 'Tis her privilege through all the years of this our life to lead from joy to joy. For she can so inform the mind that is within us, so impress with quietness and beauty, and so feed with lofty thoughts that neither evil tongues, rash judgments, nor the sneers of selfish men, nor greetings where no kindness is, nor all the dreary intercourse of daily life shall e'er prevail against us, or disturb our cheerful faith that all which we behold is full of blessing. And Lord Byron, another of the inspired romantic poets, wrote, there is pleasure in the pathless woods, there is rapture on the lonely shore, there is society where none intrudes by the deep sea, and music in its roar. Yet I love not man the less, but nature more. My own life has been affected deeply by Albert Schweitzer's philosophy of reverence for life, which he summed up in this manner. A man is ethical only when life as such is sacred to him, that of plants and animals, as well as that of his fellow man, and when he devotes himself helpfully to all life that is in need of help. It's a pleasure.
I know the time is...
That's okay.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Melanie Millerin.
Actually, it's Alan.
You can stay there.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All the microphones.
My name is Alan Milliron, and co-founder with my wife, Melanie. She has allowed me to do this little presentation here this evening. Hands, Heart, and Health is a private, nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the quality of life for the elderly, the physically impaired, developmentally disabled, mentally retarded, emotionally disturbed, and other special population groups through environmental interaction. Recognizing all people need and can contribute to society despite their disease, disability, or dysfunction, Hands, Heart, and Health provides opportunities for reassurance, strength, and growth. The key to successful coping is a process we simply call horticultural therapy. Horticultural therapy creates a shared sense and practice of community by relieving stress, anxiety, and depression, while promoting information, warmth, and self-help. Utilizing the natural environment of a community garden setting, Hands, Heart, and Health creates an ecological framework for at-risk special population groups to better understand their environment and grasp the interrelationships of life. Through the use of horticultural therapy and community garden programs, people with special needs can receive skills training, improve their nutritional supplements, facilitate physical rehabilitation, increase socialization opportunities, and develop a personal confidence and self-esteem. In essence, gardening programs help to restore a person's sense of control over their own life and their environment. Community gardens help special population groups cope with what otherwise might be unmanageable situations. As a result, they and the neighborhoods in which they live are buffered somewhat from the ongoing stresses of urbanization. Because Hands, Heart, and Health gardening programs primarily target low and moderate income neighborhoods, the innovative use of recycled materials quickly becomes apparent. In the community garden, commonly discarded items such as broken concrete, lumber, brick, stone, and even old tires can turn the most unsightly lots into productive, beautiful neighborhood gardens. Other recyclables that help make horticultural therapy very cost-effective are everyday throwaways, such as those clear plastic bakery containers and plastic cups. These are used as indoor gardens or mini greenhouses for seedlings and small plants, which can be easily moved, as well as for observing the growing process. Hands, Heart, and Health and horticultural therapy offer new alternatives to many old social and environmental problems. Encounters with the wonders of our natural environment create new relationships and promote experiences. By offering a greater understanding of nature, we gain a better insight of our own personal potential and growth.
Thank you very much. Why don't we... Thank you very much. Why don't we just go around? I didn't realize you were with RAP. Go ahead, and after you're finished, then we'll hear from, is it Elaine? Renee, yes, thank you. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Debbie McQueen, and I'm representing RAP, Residents for Alternative Pest Policy. A 3-minute time slot doesn't allow me enough time to paint a backdrop of RAP's activities and history to explain what we do and why we do it. So in a nutshell, RAP is a grassroots group of volunteers that organized in 1987 in an effort to eliminate the public's involuntary exposure to pesticides. A little over a year ago, RAP launched a campaign to introduce and promote the concept of Urban Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, in Arizona public schools. IPM is a common sense approach to controlling pest problems. It utilizes preventive measures and alternative devices. Success stories from across the nation from schools that have converted over to IPM show that not only does it not only is it cognizant of public health, but also that it saves the school district's money. Let's see, so we formed a committee comprised of a handful of scientists and health professionals who generously applied their expertise and time to our grassroots action. Subsequently, we established the state's first school IPM program at Eagle Ridge Elementary School in the Paradise Valley School District. An evaluation of the first pilot program, which was performed at the completion of the trial period, revealed that additional resources such as technical assistance were needed to fine-tune and expand the fledgling program. So in order to facilitate bringing the necessary resources into Arizona and to equally prompt the interest and some long overdue action from the state, RAP made application on behalf of the state to the EPA for a grant to fund a project to demonstrate the feasibility of school IPM here in Arizona. The proposal was successful, and since the money could not be awarded to a non-governmental body, the Structural Pest Control Commission is housing the project. And RAP is proud to announce that the Paradise Valley School District has accepted the challenge to foster the demonstration project, and their cooperation will help set a protocol for others to build upon and learn from. It requires more than a successful demonstration and one cooperative school district to make IPM go full circle and benefit all of Arizona's children. Conventional pest control is practiced by schools in Arizona as a matter of antiquated policy that can be changed by public demand. A domino effect can be achieved statewide by expressing support and writing your individual school district to encourage change. In addition, our efforts to increase public awareness to IPM have been supplemented in part by the National Coalition for the Misuse of Pesticides, NCAMP. We designed a program specifically for the Paradise Valley School District entitled Hug a Bug.
My name is Renee Guillory, and I'm here introducing the project called Alazon. It's an Arizona Journal of Social Ecology, an environmental publication for Arizona. For the past decade or so, members of the environmental community have become increasingly aware of the fact that making good public policy decisions now and in the future has meant having access not only to the most reliable and current information available about environmental and related social issues, but also to information about the people and institutions who are concerned about these issues and who are involved in some way with making the crucial decisions which ultimately will determine our common future. Getting this information, however, can be frustrating and even problematic. More and more social activists of all orientations and levels of commitment have turned to the emerging alternative press for information on a range of issues as diverse as gay rights, women's health, and the racial or racist dimension of pollution, to acclaimed publications such as the Utne Reader on the issues, Ms., Buzzworm, and The Nation. Comprehensive as their treatments of the critical issues of the day are, alternative national journals cannot serve the specific needs of activists who are operating locally, nor should they be asked to. At the local grassroots level, activists participate in organizational meetings, attend public hearings or media events, read and write organizational newsletters, and network with other members of their activist communities for most of their information. On this information, they must rely during campaigns on specific issues, at election time, or while building coalitions. The environmental community is especially constrained in terms of its access to information because environmental issues often involve complex legal or political arrangements between and among levels of government and private industry. Additionally, environmental issues, once they reach the public policy arena, are frequently highly technical in nature. There are only so many issues to which we could devote our time, becoming lay experts, if you will, and still be effective. When we turn to the mainstream press, something which environmentalists use more as a barometer for measuring their success in influencing the public agenda than as a source of information, if environmental issues are covered at all, the structure and tradition of journalism thwarts any in-depth treatment of those issues. Column inches, sex appeal and newsworthiness, and simple dichotomies of right side and wrong side, these laws of journalism seem to be written in stone. The inability of the mainstream press to articulate the kaleidoscopic nature of the environmental debate often confounds the ability of activists to increase their leverage in the public policymaking arena and to communicate their goals and their concerns to the public at large. I should stress that having the public along for the ride is not a policy of good PR for environmentalists. For us to truly change the way that we treat our human family and our physical environment, it is necessary that everyone change bad habits and lifestyle patterns to some degree. More importantly, it is necessary to involve the general public because social change of this magnitude must be achieved through a democratic process. Jesse Chanley, Chris Wheeler, and I, the editors of Alazon, and many others who have supported us throughout the journal's lengthy inception, believe that our project can help to close the persistent influence gap. First, Alazon will complement the established networking and information dissemination mechanisms already operating at the grassroots level in Arizona. Even though we will publish on a quarterly schedule the first year and then monthly in 1993, we will be a consistent source of information on a range of environmental and related social issues. As a social ecology journal, we can provide much more in-depth coverage on environmental issues than the mainstream press can or will provide.
I'm Mary Jensen. I'm with Legacy of the Southwest, and we're a grassroots environmental group that formed over a couple of issues you might have heard of, namely ENSCO and the omnibus hazardous waste bill of the last session. We at Legacy of the Southwest believe that every decision that is made today is our direct inheritance to our future generations. We have to get personally involved with the environmental problems that now exist. It is not too late yet. The damage to our environment is not irreversible yet, but if we do not step in and speak out now as citizens, it will be. I do not want my grandchildren to look around a dead earth with contaminated air and contaminated water and say, why didn't someone try to stop this madness before it was too late? If as citizens we do not unite, for a clean environment, then we better pray that Biosphere 2 works and works well, because that will be our legacy to our future. What can you do? Educate yourself on the issues not only in your community, but in the state as a whole and on the national issues too. Make your elected officials aware that you are watching them and that you expect them to vote for strong environmental legislation, and then make sure that that legislation is enforced. At Legacy, we have a phone tree set up for that specific purpose. We have someone at the legislature every day monitoring environmental votes, and we contact people in those districts to let them know just how their representatives are voting. If you want to plug into the Legacy phone tree, that's available to you, or I highly suggest you start your own. Make it a point to help other communities that are fighting environmental problems. Do not think of only your backyard. The whole earth is our backyard, and we all live downwind, and we better get involved with cleaning it up before Mother Nature decides to close the playground. A couple of examples of how you can get involved right now is the Cholla landfill hearing tomorrow night in El Mirage. There is a Maricopa oil refinery hearing coming up in Maricopa on October 15th. And I think that's probably going to wrap it up, and I'm going to quit before you all start clapping.
I'm Steve Brittle. I'm a researcher with the Don't Waste Arizona Coalition. We help get rid of the nightmare called ENSCO. Now that the ENSCO Toxic Waste Incinerator Project is no longer an imminent threat to the people of Arizona, there is a tremendous opportunity to implement state-of-the-art solar detoxification technology using federal funds. There are indeed EPA regulations that mandate disposal of certain toxic waste by high-temperature incineration, but incineration itself creates entirely new harmful air pollutants like dioxins and furans because of all the hazardous wastes are not completely incinerated. And incineration also releases some of the harmful metals right into the air along with acids. Also, incineration creates toxic incinerator ash that must be landfilled. The other disadvantage of incineration is that large quantities of fossil fuels are used for the incineration process, depleting our natural resources. There is an alternative within our grasp, however. The Department of Energy, through its Solar Energy Research Institute at Sandia Labs in New Mexico, has developed a solar-powered alternative that emits no pollutants. By using a point-focused concentrator, which resembles a cup-shaped mirror that focuses the heat of the sun into a specific point, temperatures in excess of 1,000 degrees centigrade are achieved. Instead of this process being one that uses oxygen, this is a steam reforming method, which is a reduction reaction. Neither air nor oxygen are needed. This minimizes, if not completely eliminates, products of incomplete combustion and acids or any other emissions like heavy metals. No fossil fuels are used, and there's no shortage of sunlight in this state. Same Sandia Labs has another technology that uses the effect of ultraviolet radiation interacting with the semiconductor catalyst in solution with water to destroy chlorinated solvents, PCBs, dioxins, pesticides, and industrial dyes. This process doesn't create new harmful chemicals, breaks down chemicals into harmless compounds. When Peter Jennings' World News Tonight reported this in August of 1990, the reporter even drank the water coming out the end of the system. Most of Arizona's incinerable waste is actually solvents used in the semiconductor industries. These new solar technologies will handle what Arizona produces. Best of all, these are not expensive technologies. A point-focused concentrator is about $150,000 for the best made. Volume purchases will reduce costs for individual units. Even better, it appears that the federal government would love to show off its millions of dollars in research it produced, since the technology is now ready for commercial applications and exploitation. The DOE would spring at the chance to do a venture with the state that already has a prepared line site. The DOE might even do it for free with grants or provide a low-interest loan. Coupled with a vacuum changer depressurization transfer facility to stop fugitive emissions, a mere $1 million would probably develop an Arizona facility capable of disposing of all its present incinerable wastes. This is not bad considering the $44 million Arizona spent to get rid of ENSCO. It would also prevent Arizona from having to enter into waste exchange pacts with other states in an effort to satisfy the requirements of our capacity assurance plan, which the state has to have to keep its EPA funding. Before we get stuck with waste or problems we don't generate in the first place, let's just handle our own waste safely and grow smart.
Good evening. I'm Sue Cafferty with University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. And I work primarily in community gardening programs through Extension, and I won't get off on that so I will follow my notes, because once I start talking about gardening programs, I understand what our first speaker was referring to. people that are in gardening really understand what the passionate life is all about when they are so connected to the soil and the environment. Cooperative Extension offers research-based information, agriculture, home economics, and 4-H youth programs. In these programs, they get involved in horticulture, human wellness, nutrition, community leadership development, and family and home resource management. In cooperation with the faculty and staff, and it's very important that the trained volunteers bring this research-based information to you and the community. I think one of the exciting things about being involved in Cooperative Extension is that we are on the cutting edge of issues that are facing the nation. And like the rest of the country, environmental stewardship in Cooperative Extension is a very important issue. Here in Arizona, Cooperative Extension is part of the University of Arizona College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. And we belong to this nationwide network of cooperative extension systems with other land-grant universities, and we're also part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And this unique network gives us access to the most up-to-date and reliable information. We are the people that bring non-biased information to you. And it's helping people solve problems today and in the future. So we are here to help the people of Arizona, and the underlying philosophy of Cooperative Extension is to help people help themselves, and we take the university to the people. So many times people addressing environmental issues aren't really sure about what all the real facts are. We bring people together. It seems as though we're always involved in committees all the time. But we don't decide what's going to be evolving as an important issue to the public. The people themselves decide, and they then in turn look into the issues and policies. Consumer education programs like the Master Recycler program that's going on all over the state. Trained volunteers are then trained to go out and give the public more information. Programs such as the Master Gardener program and the Urban Gardening program, we are the ones that give many weeks of educational programs to the public, and non-biased and research-based education programs. So not only are we on the cutting edge of issues facing the nation, we are here to serve you. Bring your problems to us, and we bring people together to help you solve the problems. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gloria Felt, and I represent Planned Parenthood of Central and Northern Arizona, and we deal with the most challenging part of the environmental problems. Population and environment are a delicate balance. As a matter of fact, there would be no need to talk about environmental problems were it not for the growth of human population and our technology on Earth. It took from the beginning of time until about the mid-1800s for the population of the world to hit 1 billion. By the early part of the 20th century, about 1930, that had doubled to 2 billion. Within about 50 years after that, we had doubled to 4 billion. Today, the population of the world stands at over 4.3 billion and will double in approximately 35 years. Technology has created an abundance of births over deaths, not by increasing the birth rate, but rather by decreasing the death rate through what are very positive improvements in sanitation, immunization, medical advances, better nutrition, and all of those kinds of factors. We have given ourselves death control without balancing it with birth control. Unless we human beings manage ourselves responsibly, we will not succeed in sustaining the rest of the environment. So it is Planned Parenthood's unique and valuable mission to ensure that human beings can freely make responsible choices about parenthood and childbearing. And here are just a few of the services that Planned Parenthood offers to enable that to happen. Reproductive health care, including all medically approved birth control methods, which are provided without regard to ability to pay. Community education programs that empower individuals of all ages to make responsible choices. A volunteer speakers bureau for community organizations on the subjects of population, how to talk with your children about sexuality, and many other topics. An international advocates committee which studies world population and family planning trends and is in the midst of developing a binational family planning program. And finally, but definitely not least, advocacy for individual rights and accessible reproductive health care for all. These are Arizona projects which help to achieve that delicate balance locally and for the world. And thank you very much for allowing me to be here.
Thank you all. This first panel did a great job of keeping track. Did we lose the lights? Okay. Are we missing? Let's see, who we have. Is this?
Yes. Yes, I'm sorry, dear. Yes, I do. Yep.
Yeah. We have one more place. Is oh, he's coming. Okay. Well, Ellen, you want to start off? Ellen Bonin. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ellen Bonham Bilbrey, and I'm here representing Growing Wild over Arizona. I hope you all know today is Wildflower Planting Day, and I hope that you've been out already planting your wildflowers. To give you a little background on this, I'm going to read a story that we've produced that is going to be running all over the state. Arizona backroad enthusiasts know where to drive to find the spectacular meadows lush with lupin, owl clover, and Mexican poppies, but the less adventurous drivers will never find the Sonoran Desert wildflowers. Growing Wild over Arizona is a statewide project to bring the fields of wildflowers to our roadsides, and the public is encouraged to plant and cultivate the roadside wildflowers. In a few years, even the less adventurous road trip warriors will travel in corridors of colorful flowers. Leroy Brady, manager of Roadside Development Services for ADOT, says that the wildflower planting has been part of its regular highway program but only about 5 to 10% of our roadways have been planted over the years due to the cost of purchasing and planting the wildflower seed, which is harvested by hand. Purchased commercially, the seed mixes contain successively flowering species for continuous color throughout the blooming season. Most of the plants are perennials and may take 2 to 3 years to become firmly established. Interspersed with the wildflower, several species of native grasses are selected to provide additional contrast and texture. Aside from the aesthetic value and the maintenance cost reduction, the tough crew of wildflowers and grasses will combat soil erosion and provide habitats for fast diminishing wildlife. Another cost reduction for the fledgling ADOT program has been to cut back on mowing and chemical spraying along roadsides to aid the existing native plants. States such as Michigan estimate savings at $2 million per year, and the naturalized roadsides abound with color and diversity. Texas estimates that their advanced roadside wildflower program has created a third tourist season and has reduced highway maintenance costs by an estimated $100 million over the life of the program. With the increased interest and demand for more information on wildflowers, the nonprofit organization Growing Wild over Arizona has matured into a full-fledged active program. Each town will invite the public to plant seeds in the town boundaries along the roadsides. The public awareness campaign will encourage individuals, communities, state agencies, professional landscapers, growers, governmental agencies, and private businesses to participate in some way in planting these native wildflowers. But while many other states have made clear roadside policies to plant, protect, and preserve wildflowers on roadsides, Arizona still has much work ahead if they want wildflowers to flourish on the roadsides. Rita Jo Anthony, a wildflower seed specialist in Arizona and supporter of Growing Wild, explains that a task force to set wildflower policy for Arizona is the only way to preserve and manage Arizona's native wildflowers. She also suggested Thank you very much. Plant your wildflowers today.
I'm Lloyd Clark. How many of you arrived here by other means than a private vehicle tonight? Did any of you come here by public transit? then I'm going to speak to that, the lack of alternative modes of transportation. Next year, some 19,000 sports fans are expected to gather over here at the new mass assembly point, America West Arena. They'll travel to that downtown Phoenix location in private automobiles and buses. If 2,000 of those patrons arrive by transit or chartered bus, that leaves 17,000 who will drive to the sports complex in private autos or taxis. Estimating an average of 3 persons per vehicle, that will cause 5,666 cars and vans to converge on this stadium in the 200 block of East Jefferson. Suppose the average number of persons in each car is 5. The count of personally driven vehicles numbers even then a whopping 3,400. Ushering these passenger cars and buses to the sports arena's environs, providing for parking, and then moving them out of the area will impact heavily the city's traffic control resources. The idling of the engines during entry and exit advances will increase significantly the area's air pollution. A remedy is available, and it's only a block away from the new sports facility that's due to open next spring. The rail line just south of the stadium offers the means by which patrons could be transported to and from that site. Fans from Sun City West, Surprise, El Mirage, Youngtown, Sun City, Peoria, Glendale, and West Phoenix could have ready access to the Santa Fe Railway line by parking their autos at lots adjacent to the railroad's right-of-way. Those who would travel from Gilbert, Mesa, Tempe, and other parts of the East Valley to the sports arena could be transported by train over the Southern Pacific tracks. This is to urge the governmental and business and community leaders to join in developing a corporate body that would put to use the most neglected transportation resource in the Salt River Valley, those rail lines that traverse the metropolitan area from Sun City to Gilbert. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Diana Jennings, and I'm chairing Future Forum 7, which is the environment. I was selected to chair that when I suggested that the Clean Air Campaign switch their motto to "Don't breathe 1 in 5," and they decided they had to put me someplace to keep me out of trouble. The Future Forum process resulted in hundreds of recommendations dealing with the environment and arts and culture. This process, one of inclusion, of vision, of masses, led to consensus on many issues. That part of the process was vibrant and innovative. From those recommendations, the focus now turns in Future Forum 7 to action. Future Forum 7, Desert Renaissance, is a call to action for all of those resolutions still seeking advocates. Desert Renaissance was chosen as a theme because it expresses a sense of rebirth and renewal for the natural desert in which we nest. It also calls to mind the sense of art and beauty, which is integral to the appreciation and preservation of our environment. Set for mid-April, and the final date is still being negotiated, but plans are to have it coincide as closely as possible with Earth Day. Future Forum 7 has already become a catalyst for many projects reflective of the original recommendations. For instance, a special subcommittee is currently working on the creation of an environmental ordinance for the city of Phoenix. This project will be ready for unveiling at Future Forum 7. There are also groups working on expansion citywide of the curbside recycling program. Another coalition is forging a proposal for regional environmental information networks. All of these projects and more are geared towards completion for the April Future Forum event. At this event, these projects will be presented to action-minded participants who will then chart the plan for adoption of the various legislation ordinances necessary to make the Future Forum cycle complete. This is not the vision of the future. This is the future. Please plan on joining those folks interested in the environment and arts and culture for this important event in mid-April.
My name's Kay Jeffries, and Diana spoke of actions, and my committee is hopefully going to put forward some of those requests for action. I'm chairing the Phoenix Environmental Quality Commission's Ad Hoc Committee on the Environmental Ordinance / Policy Committee. And if I were Nancy Rona, I could do this in 3 minutes. I don't know. I'm going to give her a run for money. In the fall of '89, after months of public meetings, the Phoenix Futures Forum drafted a list of 21 initiatives for the 21st century. Initiative number 6 proposed to design a comprehensive model municipal environmental ordinance. The ordinance would target recycling, littering, hazardous waste disposal, landscape materials, allergenic plants, visual and noise pollution, and develop sensitive and practical regulations which could be used by Phoenix and other communities. In Environmental Quality Commission, the creation of such an ordinance, appointing an ad hoc committee comprised of members of the Futures Forum, EQC members, and representatives from local business groups to begin the work. Mayor Johnson set this as his top priority for the Environmental Quality Commission in May of 1990. Our first action was to expand the charge to also address environmental policy as the overall basis for a comprehensive ordinance. What is an environmental ordinance? In a generic sense, an environmental policy or ordinance is one created to protect, restore, or enhance the natural or urban environment, mitigate adverse effects to the environment, or to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Policies may be established in ordinances found in a section of the Phoenix Municipal Code entitled Morals and Conduct, in health, zoning, building, criminal, and housing codes, and in the general plan. In addition, many federal, state, and county regulations and statutes also apply. The scattering of these regulations has made awareness and compliance nearly impossible for even the most well-intentioned. Collecting these like regulations into one document can help to clarify our environmental goals, facilitate understanding, and provide consistency in matters of compliance. Our committee conducted an inventory of all city departments, focusing on 11 broad areas of the environment. The information collected will assist us in identifying existing policies and regulations and in pinpointing gaps, overlaps, and omissions. Based on this analysis, we will begin, in cooperation with appropriate city departments and others, to address the creation of new policies, ordinances, and programs where needed. Final approval was for the City Council. But why do we need such an ordinance? Because the environment, by and large, will not substantially improve on the honor system. The EPA is going to pass a lot more responsibility down to the local level, and we'd better be prepared to assist in compliance or pay the penalties. In a desert city such as Phoenix, the need to achieve, maintain environmental balance and economic viability is the key to long-term sustainability. Preserving the quality of life that has always been Phoenix's greatest selling feature is of paramount importance to continued rational growth, and I stress rational. A comprehensive environmental policy and ordinance arrived at by cooperation of all of Phoenix's citizens can begin to bring about this critical partnership between environment and the economy for the benefit of current and future citizens.
Right on the money.
My name is Maggie Silk, taking the place of Linda Reiser, and I represent the Arizona Green Party. As a new alternative to the current political parties, the Arizona Green Party has been formed to represent citizens who are disenfranchised from our political structure, who don't feel that their votes matter, and feel that they are excluded from decision-making. The Green Party is committed to environmental and humanitarian principles and to the development of a sustainable solar economy in Arizona. We are the party of the future, with a focus on careful stewardship of the land and the survival of all species. We are committed to the 4 pillars of international green politics: ecological wisdom, peace, social justice, and grassroots democracy. We also emphasize decentralization, the need to reorient both politics and economics toward the local community level. There is a strong vision of a society that guarantees equal rights to all, and we aspire to what Dr. Helen Caldecott calls a politics of compassion. Green policies and proposals add up to sweeping social, economic, and political change, and greater environmental protection. The groundwork must be laid in each community, and it is our responsibility to provide voters with reliable information, creative ideas, and acceptable candidates. Democracy must be reclaimed as membership, not leadership politics. Our challenge is to determine how we can build our economy and still preserve the environment. The solutions to our problems require everyone's participation. We will be much more than a conventional political party, much more than just another election vehicle and another line on the ballot. We will be active year-round and will be grassroots democratic. Our platform will be determined by our voters, not by professional politicians. And our candidates will be held accountable to that platform. The groundwork must be laid with local and state elections and a politics that insists that power flow from the local level up to Washington. The Democrats and the Republicans continue to call for endless growth, but unchecked industrial growth has brought our world to the brink of ecological collapse. It is suicidal and it is based in greed. We will look to the future in all decision-making, not just for profits to be made today. The science of ecology has inspired a new understanding of humanity as one element in an intricate web of relationships that make up the world. The Native Americans have a saying that leaders must take account of the future to the 7th generation.
I'm Sam Morse. I'm representing tonight the chairmanship of the Recycling Committee for the Future Forum. We have been at this business of, tonight you heard speak over to my left, mention the curbside program. And that is one of the issues that comes up before our review as we look at recycling and the total overall program that's being set forth in the city of Phoenix. In 5 years, we expect everyone to have a blue barrel before their house in order to make the key decisions that they can themselves about materials that they can put in there and can be recycled. But just remember, you're only talking about 50% of the waste stream when you're talking about the single-family house. There's the commercial and industrial side, which also has to be met and has to be dealt with in the same manner, and programs have to be set up in order to do that. Some things are going on. If you go back in some of the various fast food areas, you'll find some extra containers are saying back there, they're asking for cardboard to be put in those units. There's no reason why you can't participate in those just as well as the commercial industry and the industrial industry is doing. We will see larger areas for containment in the various areas. The Blue Barrel is only one part of it. We recognize that there will also be drop-off stations throughout the metropolitan area of Phoenix. Zoning is going to be one of the criteria we're going to have to get through because everything requires a special use permit for us to do those type of things. But that's something that I think we can overcome, and with the support of the planning departments and so forth, we can have those kind of things happening. There's some myths as we talk about recycling. There's the feeling that we have to create markets for the recycled products that we can create as we are being picked up by the various industries. That's not true. There is plenty of markets for all the materials that can be picked up through the recycling process. There are some that are more difficult than others, such as glass and polymers. However, you as people will make decisions yourself and can begin today to make decisions about recycling. When you walk in the grocery store, when you pick up a product, can you make the determination that I can reuse it myself and it never hits the waste stream at all? That's important, and that's where it all begins with each one of us, and that is where we need to begin, right with us. You and I working in the process.
You and me.
You and me.
I'm Kathy McAllister of the American Hydrogen Association. I am the secretary. The American Hydrogen Association is a nonprofit organization of individuals and institutions, technical and non-technical, who are dedicated to the advancement of clean, renewable energy forms such as solar hydrogen and solar electricity. The mission of the American Hydrogen Association is to close the information gap between the researchers, the industry, and the general public, drawing on worldwide technologies concerning solar hydrogen, wind, new materials, engine development, fuel cells, and other technologies that help facilitate a clean energy conversion practices that protect our environment. Arizona depends nearly 100% on outside oil to run its transportation system. The United States is now using 6.2 billion barrels of oil per year. Of that, 3.5 billion barrels must be supplied from foreign supplies. Domestic oil reserves now stand about 25 billion barrels. That equals 5 years of known reserves. We have known since 1973 that we are dependent upon OPEC oil. Since 1973, we have spent each year the equivalent of buying all the real estate in Arizona to supply our needs for oil. We have now sold Arizona 19 times. U.S. oil consumption is expected to increase from the current 17 million barrels a day to 22 million barrels by 2010, while domestic production will fall from 8.8 million barrels per day to around 5 million barrels. Imports will exceed 75% of total consumption by the year 2010 unless we take steps to replace oil with renewable resources. Currently, we are importing 60% of our oil from foreign countries. Arizona can lead the way in making itself, the United States, and much of the world become energy independent by utilizing its vast solar hydrogen energy resource. We can use sewage and garbage for fuel and materials rather than exporting state. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Did an outstanding job. Excellent. I was just wanted to put a plug for my one-stop dumping in terms of recycling, and that's Why Waste America on 30th Street in Jefferson. You can dump anything there. So thank you all very much. The next group is slowly assembling. This is a wonderful evening. I'm just thrilled at all of your participation and your sharing, and the wealth of information here. More microphones here. Who's next on the list? Mike? Greg, did you want to start?
Sure.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Greg Pinkowski from ACRAR, Center for Peace and Justice. ACRAR Center for Peace and Justice was originally known as Arizona Center to Reverse the Arms Race. Since the early 1980s, its main focus, as its name implies, was to heighten public awareness of the dangers of the world's nuclear arms race and to provide public education. ACRAR Center for Peace and Justice members believe this focus is of primary importance to the survival of the Earth. The current environmental disaster in Kuwait, the burning of oil fields, simulating a nuclear winter, underscores the importance of the stopping of the arms race. Our members participate in public education, sending speakers to schools and to any group requesting discussions about war and peace, as well as issues concerning the environment and social justice. An annual poetry contest is offered to Valley schools to help students discuss these issues. We also organize the Shadow Project, painting shadows of people on sidewalks with washable paint to commemorate Hiroshima and Nagasaki each August. ACRAR Center for Peace and Justice members also hold training sessions for those willing to participate in nonviolent civil disobedience, and also lobbies our public officials to see nonviolent resolutions to problems at all levels. Most of our active members have participated in nonviolent civil disobedience at the Nevada nuclear test site, probably the most environmentally ravaged area on the Earth. ACRAR Center for Peace and Justice meets on the second Monday of each month at 37 East Indian School Road, the Central Presbyterian Church here in Phoenix. Our meetings begin at 7:30 p.m. with a potluck at 6:30 p.m. Our study group is open to the public and happens on the fourth Monday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Current world events prove that when people lead, leaders will follow. Please join us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ferd Haverly, and I'm wearing a couple of hats, and the idea of getting through this in 3 minutes is very hard for me to deal with. I play guitar, and when I go to do a performance, I don't know what song I'm going to do that evening because I try to feel what's going on in the room and on with the people. I have lots of literature. I'm not going to try to give you the background on my issues and organizations with the depth these other folks have. I want you to get the principle underneath these issues. The principle is that we have to find each other. We're in trouble in lots of ways. We need to hook up. We not only have to hook up for information, we have to hook up for the support we all need. A lot of my heroes are in the room tonight, people who sacrifice and risk to make a better world. We need each other. I've been working on community-based issues since 1984 in Phoenix. What I have become aware of is the fundamental need to help us all go forward is to provide alternative media outlets which realize that not most of the people watch television to get their information nowadays. Very few people get the level of information that we do as activists. We have to reach them through new technologies. What I discovered in trying to advance this idea was that in the city of Phoenix, there's a contract which calls for a nonprofit organization to run public access television for the public good, and that nonprofit's entire job is supposed to be making public access work. So anyone in this room, any organization, any individual can go to the community at large with their message. Tremendously powerful tool that's never been developed in Phoenix. We formed a group called Valley Community Access Television. This group is to develop, it's working to get the city to enforce its contract, to get a nonprofit group to run public access, and to open up this technology we absolutely need to move forward. Please join us. I'm a walking literature table, believe me. Get your application for VCAT. We're a Phoenix Futures Forum action partner. We have many groups supporting this effort. Also, hook up with the Current. 60 groups list their events of social concern each month here. We just advanced to tabloid size. We have to get all the groups that aren't part of the Current on the Current tonight. And this is how we'll find each other, through TV, through this 4-page tabloid. It's a beginning, because the commercial media in this town is not going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. Thank you.
I'm Georgianne Baker, and I wear several hats too. I'm Associate Director of Women's Studies at Arizona State University, and I'm also the Women in International Development Officer at the university. And locally, I chair the international section of the Arizona Home Economics Association, and in Paris, I'm part of the governing council for the International Federation of Home Economics. So I want to put these streams together and tell you about what's going on in Arizona that I think is significant in terms of international and environmental issues. In Arizona, high school home economics teachers have designed class modules which stimulate critical global awareness and environmental issues, knowledge, attitudes, leadership, and citizen competencies. These modules were developed by members of the Arizona Home Economics Association in collaboration with the American Home Economics Association and the Arizona Department of Education, collaborating with teachers in the classrooms. The perspectives of thousands of students, most especially young women, will be influenced. And from my perspective, this contribution is especially significant because first, the modules are a model which other states and other nations may consider in post-elementary curricula. And secondly, there is a grave concern which Arizona home economists share among women leaders in Arizona, in the nation, and the world,
that women participate fully in environment and sustainable development decisions affecting the health of Mother Earth. Visible long-term contributions of women depend on dynamic and continued global and environmental education, and on the commitment resulting from this education, and on participation opportunities. In Arizona, women participate, but this is not true around the world. So I like to see this kind of education starting early in the schools. Arizona modules structure the concepts and experiences about things like this: developing countries and Western industrialized nations, ethnocentrism, malnutrition, proportional distribution of the world's food supply, overpopulation, cultural diversity in traditions, customs, and resource access of families and individuals, and the differences by gender and age, resource conservation and recycling, pollution, ecological interconnectedness, and the importance of responsible consumership and citizenship. An example in Tucson, Patty Schmalz's classes at Tucson's Canyon del Oro High School show these modules at work. Her food study life management class is designed to increase awareness and commitment to a future cleaner and safer environment. The students learn the basic scientific principles of solar energy, and they study energy conservation and materials recycling in the schools. They have a club called EASY, Environmental Awareness Society of Youth, and this is the outreach action for the program. Thank you.
I'm Deborah Giannini, and I work with the Cosanti Foundation and Paolo Soleri on urban issues. In recognizing the need for clean air and water, for sustainable practices in land use, for energy efficiency, for the preservation of natural habitat, for ecological balances in the world, we must not overlook the potential of the city and the urban context to transform life and to ensure the evolution of human societies. There is much to be accomplished to make existing cities healthy, and many choices to be made as new cities and towns are planned. This work must take precedence in the holistic considerations of the United Nations and its mission to provide security and assistance to the people of the world, and for all of us who call the city our home. We must not forget, in a worldwide trend toward urbanization, that more and more people are living in cities and suburbs, and that by the year 2000, many cities that we now know will have populations of over 10 million people. The decay of urban areas and systems will have dire consequences for many people unless housing and health issues are addressed. We must realize that the needs of all cities are predicated on characteristics of people, of geography, of climate, and therefore the systems for land use, energy, transportation, and resources must be adapted to the place. The cultural and intellectual resources of our cities must also be nurtured and be reflective of the broad diversity within them. As an educational organization, the Cosanti Foundation pursues urban studies through research and development. We have a prototype called Arcosanti, which tries to demonstrate an arcological principle blending architecture and ecology, which has been conceptualized by its founder, Paolo Soleri. In advocating three-dimensional cities built upward instead of sprawling and containing systems for interaction with the sun and the wind, Soleri has emphasized the need for the city to be viewed as an organism itself, and he has advocated the use of so-called marginal lands, areas previously thought to be of little value, and the use of extensive greenhouses as energy aprons. By condensing cities and eliminating urban sprawl, we could diminish the need for autos and their pollution. We could stop the waste of fertile lands. We could enliven our cities with neighborhoods and neighborliness. The enriching experiences of human life and culture could be enjoyed well into the next millennium, for our advances in systems and technology have greatly increased the carrying capacity of urban areas. Our cities are dying of a lack of cohesion and adaptation to real constraints. If the United Nations is to lead in building a healthy world, we must begin with cities and think of cities as complex organisms. I invite you to Arcosanti to visit, to learn within our workshops and programs, and especially on October 12th when we will focus on an important program with these issues. Thank you.
Arizona can lead the world to pollution-free prosperity. My name is Rick Dimitri Wagner. I am Executive Director of World Survival Foundation. World Survival Foundation is a private charitable organization dedicated to renewing and preserving the Earth's biosphere, that thin layer around the Earth within which all life exists. I am here to put forth a proposal that can have major impact on the environmental and economic quality of the state, as well as assure the survival of the remaining wilderness areas in the state and other areas as far away as the National Arctic Refuge in the state of Alaska. Dependence on fossil fuel energy resources is jeopardizing Arizona's environment and economy. By their continued use, our air quality is declining, and our state is drained of $4 billion plus annually from out-of-state energy purchases. Simultaneously, as our air quality worsens, our tourist trade will decline as the panoramic vistas throughout Arizona degrade. Wilderness areas in Arizona are not safe because air and water pollution does not stop at wilderness boundaries. These areas thought to be safe will slowly die as pollution increases from activities in and out of the state of Arizona. The perceived need for more cheap oil is driving our federal government to waste, through oil development, the last intact Arctic ecosystem in the world. Arizona's need for this oil makes us partially responsible. What if Arizona didn't need this oil? What if Arizona could develop an energy system that cleaned the air and water so our tourist trade would increase? What if this energy system allowed Arizona to become energy independent and then to export energy to our neighboring states, and so would protect us from pollution from out of state? What if this energy system created thousands of new jobs and a strong economy that did not rely on out-of-state resources? What if our need for oil declined so much there was not the need to drill for oil in the National Arctic Refuge? Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. This is all possible if Arizona would choose to develop its vast solar energy resources to produce hydrogen. Hydrogen made from solar energy can replace our need for polluting fossil and nuclear fuels. Hydrogen is the only fuel that is safe, non-toxic, and essentially pollution-free. As an energy carrier, it allows solar energy to be used to power everything from cars and homes to airplanes and industry. It can be transported very efficiently by truck, pipeline, and tanker ships. Hydrogen can be made from water by simple electrolysis, and not much water when you compare it to gasoline. It takes 18 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of gasoline. It takes 2.3 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of hydrogen. The transition to a solar hydrogen economy will be good for Arizona in every way. At the time to stop pollution, please let me finish this one last paragraph. At the same time,
We can't, because everybody's been honoring the 3-minute commitment. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Friesen. I represent the Motorola Four-Wheel Drive Club, in addition, the Arizona State Association of Four-Wheel Drive Clubs. My presentation is to elucidate the primary function of the organized four-wheel drive clubs. Organized four-wheel drive clubs are a vehicle to heighten the environmental consciousness of the ATV and off-highway vehicle participants. This enlightenment is not credible through the radical environmental groups because of dissimilar interests. This gives us a foot in the door to raise the overall environmental consciousness and educate the off-highway user. Our four-wheel drive club contributes hundreds of hours each year in desert and river cleanup projects, Forest Service adopt-a-trail programs, BLM volunteer help, etc. We continuously strive to better the appearance of the environment and have documented over 1,000 hours of voluntary service to date. And that's just our club. The State Association documents about 1,000 hours every year of volunteer service. We are not opposed to closing fragile land areas, and we work with the land management organizations to determine which areas of the state are necessary to keep open for vehicle travel. It is shameful, though, how this attitude is exploited and millions of acres are closed inexcusably under the auspices of environmental protection. Approximately 4.1 million acres were closed just last year. Road and land closures don't retain people in the city. It only co-locates a larger number of users in a smaller area. This will devastate the usable land even faster. We shouldn't catalyze our problem by closing large amounts of land without a very good reason. I challenge you not to allow yourself to pass judgment regarding the majority based on the actions of the minority. Most off-highway users are considerate, conscious, and understand the fragile state of the environment. But most people only see the result of the few that litter and recreate where we're not supposed to. We as organized four-wheelers want to stop them more than anyone. We advocate allowing the land users to police and take responsibility for the environment, therefore not punishing everyone by closing land and Forest Service roads or legislating restrictions. Laws will only keep the law-abiding in line. The abusers will continue to devastate. One of our founding fathers stated that the government which governs least governs most. We must limit our blind following of California's legislation and remain the great, unique state that we are. I believe Arizona is the greatest state in the union with respect to the land diversity and openness. And let's keep it that way. Thanks.
My name is David Chalton, and for the past 4 years, I've been involved with putting on a poetry festival in Encanto Park in Phoenix. Part of this festival has involved a children's contest. The contest has worked so well that we've decided to make it the permanent and dominating feature of the festival. So on Saturday afternoon, November the 16th, we will have probably about 70 finalists from a contest that we run. They'll be reading their work at the park. Leading up to this, I and some other people have been going into the schools talking about environmental issues. If the planet is to have a future, responsibility for it is going to have to fall on that generation in school now. I am invariably surprised and impressed that these children have so much greater grasp of the environmental problems than I ever expected them to have. It gives me some ground for optimism. Trying to address those problems with language may seem an odd way to go about it. After all, poetry is something that rhymes, and it has to do with Shakespeare and things like this. One of the first things I try and do is tell them to forget Shakespeare. He's been dead for 400 years, and the world he lived in is not the world that we have. I think it's important for us to have a culture that speaks for us, that is our culture, that is a culture that can be used, and that when we understand that, then when we read Shakespeare or listen to Beethoven or whatever, we can put it in context as part of a continuity. Continuity means we are going to continue. Another aspect of being a poet and trying to be an activist is that we seem not to be taken notice of in this country very much. But I think of those poets who began an anti-nuclear test movement in Kazakhstan in the Soviet Union. That movement affected about 30 million people within a couple of years. And the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia was made possible largely because writers refused to swallow the government's propaganda. They refused to take the easy way out, and they refused to go along and settle for a life of trivia. I think our challenges as artists in this society have a lot more in common with the challenges faced by those artists in Eastern Europe in recent years. And if we have our freedoms and our freedom of speech, I think we need to encourage the children right now to use their freedoms, to be loud, be critical if they must, but address the issues and seek some hope in using language to gain power over incredible problems.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate this. Very exciting happenings here. We have our last panel group coming up now, and then we may have an opportunity for one or two additional speakers. I know that there were a few people who came and said they didn't get a slot on the agenda, and I think we might be able to accommodate them now. Thank you.
My name is Haley Mang. I'm the Director of Community Relations at the Desert Botanical Garden. I'm here to talk to you about the projects of the garden and specifically about a project that we have called Desert Fest. As we've heard tonight, and as we all know, Phoenix is a desert city which is faced daily with some harsh environmental realities. At the same time, our location in the Sonoran Desert puts us in one of the most beautiful and fragile ecosystems in the world, one to be proud of and one to care for. At the Desert Botanical Garden, our focus is on educating desert residents about basic desert concepts and ways we can all live here more appropriately and effectively, and we conduct many outreach activities throughout the year to accomplish this goal, as some of you may know. One recommendation of the Phoenix Futures Forum long-range plan that we've heard about tonight was that Phoenix should have a citywide festival celebrating the desert and its inherent value and beauty. Last year, the Desert Botanical Garden piloted this idea, combined it with existing garden programs, and implemented Desert Fest, which is a 2-day festival held at the garden in cooperation with the Futures Forum, the Arizona Historical Society, Liberty Wildlife, and many individual artists and performing groups. The festival last year attracted over 5,000 visitors, and the activities they participated in included puppet shows to teach children about the interdependent relationships between desert plants, animals, and people, pruning and planting, and other horticulture demonstrations, desert storytelling, demonstrations on the traditional uses of arrowweed, performances by musical groups such as Francine Reed, the Cowboy Legends, and the Phoenix Symphony Woodwind Quintet, among many others. The basic message of this festival is that the desert is a place rich in culture and inherent beauty, a place where human beings can thrive if they are able to adapt their lifestyles to the demands of the environment, and that these adaptations need not be considered painful sacrifices. The festival is in our plans again for the spring, and we hope to eventually expand the festival beyond the confines of the Desert Botanical Garden. We hope that it will be a true reflection of the pride Phoenix has in the desert that we call home. As you know, the Desert Botanical Garden has for over 50 years been educating people about the desert. Some of you may have heard about our partnership with the City of Phoenix, the State Department of Commerce, and the University of Arizona to build the Desert House Demonstration Project, and I can give you more information on that if you're interested. We are also currently conducting research on a variety of conservation and ecology issues, including restoration of abandoned land historically used for agriculture, rare and endangered plant species and their habitats, and conservation of our own collection. And we hope to continue to provide comprehensive information about the desert to our public and hope that we can respond to the changing needs of this desert city.
Good evening. My name is Dave Collins. I'm the manager of the Maricopa County Fair. The Maricopa County Fair is a private, nonprofit educational organization which holds its event every March at the state fairgrounds. This year's opening day coincides with International Earth Day as proclaimed by the United Nations. It's a fitting beginning to the commitment the fair has made to this year's second Expo for the Environment. We have taken an entire 15,000 square foot building and its perimeter to educate the public and allow environmentally minded businesses and organizations to promote recycling, alternative resources, and conservation. Some of the exhibitors already include the Phoenix Zoo, Phoenix Clean and Beautiful, the Arizona Department of Energy, the Bureau of Land Management, the Arizona Solar Energy Association, the U.S. Forest Service, and the University of Arizona, as well as Arizona State University. One of the most exciting things that our fair has to offer with this expo is that in the 10 days of the fair run, our attendance should exceed 250,000 people. 15,000 of these will be school children on field trips. Our demographics are strong with families, and our tradition is to offer our community entertaining and educational exhibits. To encourage the attendees at the fair to visit the expo, we are bringing in the Raptor Education Foundation, a nonprofit group who cares for non-releasable birds of prey. Their ongoing educational exhibit allows the public to experience meeting bald eagles, falcons, hawks, and owls from as close as 24 inches. Their display explains how these magnificent animals become injured, how important they are in our food chain, and what we must do to conserve and protect the environment for ourselves and our future. Many of the exhibits in the expo will be targeted toward youngsters. There are several hands-on experiences for them that will also be offered. We feel it is vital to reach these youngsters since many of them are the only environmental enforcers at home. The fair will be held March 20th through the 29th, with Friday, March 20th being International Earth Day. Our goal is to provide a forum to educate our youth and our community, and to do it in rather substantial numbers. Again, I would emphasize that an important part of our expo is that the county fair is a vehicle which will attract citizens in our community who may not normally attend and view environmental exhibits. Any of you interested tonight, we have brought some literature with us about the exhibit and how to become involved. Thank you.
My name is Carolina Butler. I live in Scottsdale. I've been an activist for 20 years. I am a member of the organization Apache Survival Coalition. My topic tonight is the Mount Graham Observatory Project in the Coronado National Forest in southeastern Arizona. And in case I run out of my 3 minutes, I hope you will read the good comprehensive special report on this controversial issue, which was published by the Arizona Republic on the front page this past Sunday, September 29. This is a case involving developers against Indians' religious rights and against the environment. The primary developer is the University of Arizona Astronomy Department. Unwilling to wait for the normal process, the university astronomers turned to political intervention. Congress passed the Arizona-Idaho Conservation Act of 1988. The entire project would have been illegal except for a last-minute rider attached to the bill. As important as the red squirrels are, and they are an endangered species, they are not as important as the underlying question at issue. Can any developer get his pet project exempted from the fundamental environmental laws of this nation? If the precedent is established that the answer is yes, then 1, our environmental laws are trash, and 2, all endangered species are at risk. Briefly, the players are: the San Carlos Apache Indians are fighting for their ancient traditions surrounding their sacred Mount Graham. Our laws have failed to protect their rights. It begs the question, why don't the astronomers respect the Apache Indians' cultural values? The environmentalists are fighting for a small 480-acre old-growth forest of Engelmann spruce and corkbark fir. The forest's 380-year-old trees predate our nation by almost 2 centuries. A unique ecosystem has evolved over the centuries, which today luckily includes an endangered species, the Mount Graham red squirrel, our only legal hook. The first telescope to go online is for the Vatican. It is a small telescope which could easily have been put in several other sites. The second will be the Germans for the Max Planck Institute. The Big Columbus telescope is a joint venture and currently involving the University of Arizona and Italy's Arcetri Astrophysical Laboratory. We have been able to convince the Smithsonian Institution and Ohio State University to withdraw from this project. So the University of Arizona and Arcetri Lab are in need of partners today and more money. One of the most important things to know about this controversy is that there are suitable alternative sites for the telescopes, but there is no alternative to Mount Graham. Concerned citizens are requested to protest the violation of our nation's environmental laws and abuse of Indians' religious rights to their elected congressional representatives, plus the governor of Arizona, since this issue is in Arizona. Thank you very much.
My name is Kaylee Kirschenbaum. I'm with the Community Pesticide Watch Group. And I wish I had a piece of paper to read from, but I don't. I'm going to start reading with a poem that was presented by a member of our group named Dawn Thomas at a forum that we held in the spring called Urban and Rural and Transition. What will I tell my children when they hear Earth Mother cry? How will I explain to them how the rivers all ran dry? Can I lie about the acid rain or the plastic-laden sea, and with a grand indignant shrug lament, it wasn't me? When they ask what was a daffodil, were there ever fireflies? I'll hide my face with shame and say, I saw but closed my eyes. That's by Dawn Thomas. Our group is based on the west side, or west of Phoenix, in the communities from 83rd Avenue west all the way to Buckeye. And we formed a group with open eyes. We identified a problem with all the area applications of pesticides in our community. We have cotton fields and corn fields surrounding our homes, and the buffer zones are rolling right up to our homes. And many times we wonder what is being sprayed in our backyards. The group formed 1 year ago on September 10th when a plane was flying and applying chemicals across the street from our school. And when I called the Department of Agriculture and Department of Health Services, I'm afraid to say I didn't get the kinds of answers that I wanted. And upon asking people in our community, I found that this was a concern of many, many people. But as I say, we formed this organization with open eyes. Instead of being adversaries of the farmers, we recognized, everybody in our group recognized the necessity for farming to continue, with 50% of all farmers being over the age of 60. 2,000 farmers are leaving their farms every week. And we want farming, we want agriculture to stay, yet we want the practices to be much more responsible. Our agenda is to, we've been trying to seek solutions, and for a year we've been going to breakfast with the farmers, literally. And last week we had a meeting where we successfully, I would say, at this point maybe it's too early to judge, we had 30 people in the room, farmers, applicators, chemical representatives, and the issues that we discussed was the community's desire to know what is being sprayed on nearby fields and the development of a consensus of the best method to provide that information, and then to provide it as needed. One possibility was posting of the fields. The necessity of area growers, applicators, and PCA agents to work together to address the problems identified by the surrounding community. Self-regulation is imperative if we are all to live in harmony and good health in this valley. And also we would like to learn about the concerns of the area growers. And the consensus that we came up with is a hotline where a community can access the information.
My name is Richard Hayslip. I am with the Salt River Project, and all of you, I'm sure in this room, are aware of the fact that in the last week or so we reached a landmark, in fact a monumental agreement with respect to the Grand Canyon. The reality is that public policy analysts and doctoral candidates will be writing dissertations on this whole issue, I'm sure, for years to come, so it's going to be hard to reduce it to 3 minutes. But I would like to give you some highlights of some lessons that were learned from that process, and a little bit about the agreement that was reached. Just briefly, the agreement between the participants and the other parties calls for the installation of wet scrubbers at our Navajo power plant to be installed by the late 90s and to operate at a 90% efficiency as far as the removal of SO2 from the stacks is concerned. And although those specific and tangible results of that agreement will be a major engineering and construction project of pollution control equipment, there were other, and I think perhaps for the purposes of this meeting, more relevant ideas that resulted from that process that I'd like to talk about for a few minutes tonight. The first was a recognition by the participants in this process, the Salt River Project and the other utilities, that while the science of this issue has an important role in the decision making, at least as far as we're concerned, we also must recognize that a lack of scientific certainty is not an adequate reason to not take action. And I think that realization was at the heart of the ultimate decision that we made. Salt River Project is a technical organization with a lot of scientific people, and we will always attempt to apply scientific understanding to problems that we're confronted with. But I think we've also come to realize that within the body of public opinion and consensus of lay people on issues like this, there's a certain wisdom that might come to decisions like that at Navajo, and I think we recognize that in the decision that we ultimately made. The second idea that I think is important here is that the concept of negotiation versus litigation. Clearly, the decision at Navajo was the result of a negotiation process between the Salt River Project, representing the participants, the Grand Canyon Trust, and the Environmental Defense Fund. The initial finding or ruling by EPA in draft form called for 70% removal of SO2, the negotiated settlement between the parties to that negotiation resulted in 90% removal. So I think there's a 20% premium for negotiation that you can see right there. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Abro. I'm with Neighborhood Spirit Associations. I also was involved with Karen and Butler on the Real Salala project against at the time. My neighborhood is with inhabitants within Spirit and also within all the world and also within the U.S. and Arizona. My point is that our Maricopa County and our city officials, they don't tend to do the development in the proper areas. They always make a special district, and then the people that live within the boundaries, whether they're low income or not, these big projects, like for instance the 25-year plan, which shows the Real Salala project coming down with SRP and however the lands and properties in the area. We live in the area where we're north bank of the riverbed, within Terry Goddard's development with the so-called 25-year draft plan, which involves Arizona Center, everything downtown, the government mall. I mean, I like development and I like progress, but I like us to include everybody together because they spend about $3 billion just alone in this area, and you can tell that this area doesn't look blight at all. If you go down south to South Phoenix, you see the blight. Our governor went up to South Phoenix, and I hope that he gives credibility to maybe making some developments in our area. We have the government mall, which we have another booklet. I'd like to see possibly that the city of Phoenix and regarding to economics and the EPA and DEQ go into cleaning up the riverbed, because the Salt River, we fought it regarding to the Real Salala because it's a time bomb. It's not being cleaned out. They have placed buildings like laminated beacons, all these corporations along the north side between 7th Street and 16th Street. And we have BFI, which is on the south side of 16th Street, and yet, I know Simonton's wife, Ann, is supposed to have stock on BFI. I'm not sure, but I read it in an article in Arizona Republic. And I'd like to see, say, instead of special districts only for favorite areas like the Saguaro and Windsor and Central Acadia, again, Mountain Park, which I guess is the new location of District 6, which is south of South Mountain. Again, I'm Neighborhood Spirit Associations, Anthony Abril. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I want to applaud everybody again. I think you all did an outstanding job, and I congratulate all of you, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for each and every one of you, and I'm so glad we did this. I want to thank also members of the committee again. You want to stand? No? Okay, I think they did a great job keeping everybody on time. And we actually did this in 2 hours, so I thought, people said it couldn't be done, and we did it. So I want to thank you all again. And I also want to mention the fact that you can participate at the Forum 7, the Phoenix Futures Forum 7 Desert Renaissance, which will probably be on April 22nd or the 23rd. And please contact the Strategic Issues Department of the City of Phoenix. I would like to see all of you again, and maybe we'll even see you up in Cave Creek for the festival. Thank you again, and I think Dino might want to say a word or two, or not. Okay. Good night, and thank you all. There's plenty of information on the table as you leave, and please leave your one-page summary on the table, which will be incorporated into our report here. Thank you again, and good night.